So now that Assassin's Creed Mirage has been out for a little while, and I've all but done everything the game has had to offer, I've noticed a particularly glaring issue with the game that I'm hoping will be addressed. With Mirage being a much shorter game than the most recent RPG games, there obviously isn't an insane amount of content packed into its world, which I'm perfectly okay with, but once you finish the game, there really isn't anything for you to do. Especially if you're like me and did all the contracts, got all Derwish's artifacts, found all the books, etc. This game currently has no New Game Plus or any form of replayable missions. So here I am with this maxed out assassin that's a lot of fun to use, but I have nothing to really do with it. And I've already seen a lot of you have sort of been echoing this issue as well. Now obviously it's not like a massive deal, not every single player game needs to have tons of replay value, but I've really enjoyed Mirage and I just want more to do in it. This issue would be a rather simple one to solve for the dev team, so I wanted to highlight some of those potential solutions so that players like me who have been enjoying the game and want more to do in it have that option. The first and most obvious one that I mentioned earlier is New Game Plus. New Game Plus just sort of feels like a common sense addition to this game. The last Assassin's Creed game to actually offer a New Game Plus was Odyssey, as Valhalla never implemented it, even though it was one of the most highly requested additions from the community for the better part of 2+ years. But I think the difference with Valhalla for me is that that game is massive anyway, so I never really felt the need or motivation to go through and 100% it or replay it with a New Game Plus run, even though it still would have been nice to have the option. But with a much shorter game like Mirage that is only around 25 to 30 hours to 100% and has a lot of black box missions that allow you to complete them in multiple different ways, a New Game Plus mode just makes perfect sense. Just let players carry over their outfits, weapons, tools, and skills into a new playthrough, and have them start right after the title card with Basm as a hidden one, where the open world first opens up to you. That's a perfect starting point for a New Game Plus run, where you can kind of skip through that entire prologue tutorial phase. This almost feels like a mandatory addition to me, especially if the plan not to bring any DLC to the game is still true. Something else I'd like to see, and what I've seen a lot of other players suggest, is replayable contracts. There's a good amount of contracts in this game that are often quick but fun, and having the option to go into the contract board and replay them I think would be a nice addition, and an effective way to keep those who have finished the game a little more occupied. Maybe the option to replay the main assassinations would be nice too. Obviously you can always go back and load up your previous saves, but being able to replay them with your endgame assassin would be a lot more fun. Again, with the decent amount of replayability these black box assassinations have, I think it's a wasted opportunity to not let players experiment with the different approaches you can take with either New Game Plus or the ability to replay them whenever. Or they could always create new missions and contracts, whether it's like a weekly thing where we get a new contract every week with a similar system to raid us quests in Valhalla, or just adding them in through new updates. I know Mirage isn't going to carry on the live service model Valhalla had with those free content updates, but just a little something new every now and again could be nice. And then of course the obvious one I would really want to see is a DLC or expansion. The developer said prior to the game's release that there were no plans for DLC in Mirage, but the way it was said kind of led me to believe that depending on how the game was received, that could change. So there still might be a possibility of a DLC in the future, especially with the recent news from Ubisoft, which sounds like Mirage has been selling quite well, with numbers on par with Origins and Odyssey. Both of those games are up there as some of the best-selling games in the entire series, so maybe with those kinds of numbers, Ubisoft lets Bordeaux or another studio start work on an expansion of some kind, which I think they absolutely should, as there's plenty of potential that could be explored in an expansion. Whether it wants to follow another character like Roshan, who I'd love to see explored further in a DLC, or something after the events of Mirage's ending that further fills in the gaps between Mirage and Valhalla. I'd love to see something focused around Basm and Hytham. I think that could be really cool. There's definitely a lot they could do with something like that, and I'd hate for this to be the last we see of Basm, because he's become one of my favorite characters from the most recent Assassin's Creed games, and there's still more that I think can be explored with his character. Suffice it to say, way, there's a lot of ways to go about resolving this issue for Mirage, and the good news is that it can be solved through updates or new content additions. Let's just hope the devs are actually given the opportunity to do so, as they may have already been moved on to the next project. Either way, I hope we see some sort of update or addition in response to this current issue for the game, as a lot of us who've been having a great time with it are hoping for more to do. Let me know what you guys are hoping to see added into Mirage, potentially though through updates or some sort of expansion, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and considered subscribing to the channel if you're new. A special thank you to my members for supporting me, and other than that, thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.